right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and start and introduce really formal. We got my boy Dre on the presentation and Kevin is recording it. And afterwards, if you guys have questions, I'm sure Dre's going to be able to answer it. My name is Various, and so, hey, I'm just glad you guys came to the Wordpress Meetup, and I'm going to let you take it over, brother.
Well, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's glad to see this is kind of kicking forward. I know when the idea came about of getting the meetup together, it was sudden and not a lot of movement at first, but then some folks jumped on board, so it's good to see it still moving. Like I said, I'm going to sit down and hang out, so throughout the entire presentation, feel free to just don't throw tomatoes, but if you've got any questions or anything, fire them away. I like these kind of small, informal, close groups because we can really chat through any questions you may have. So at any time, go ahead and stop me, and we'll move forward from there. We need to get that DJ for the next meetup, though. So I'm Dre Armeda. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sucuri Security. Sucuri is a website security company. We concentrate not just on WordPress. We're platform independent, but initially what we concentrated on was the monitoring of websites and remediation of malware. So when a website gets infected, we're able to alert you to those issues and then go and clean that up. We've since branched into a more preventive approach with web application firewall, some backups, and some other features, really trying to concentrate on being that best website security company out there. So that's kind of a brief of what I do for a living. I started out on WordPress in like 2004 time frame. So that's my first introduction. I was on the front end design kind of side of the web, and I was looking for a content management system to manage my portfolio. Found WordPress, created my first theme in 2004, launched it in 2005. So I've been around a little while. I was the organizer for the first 2 WordCamps in San Diego, and I've been around the community speaking for anywhere from 10 to 15 WordCamps a year around security. So this is kind of what I do, and I really, really enjoy it. My background beyond that, I'm a 12-year Navy veteran. I was an IT and a radio man in the Navy, doing anything from satellite communications to networking. That's where my chief warrant officer in one of the squadrons I was in handed me Adobe Photoshop and Microsoft front page and said, "You're creating our intranet site." And that was in the mid-'90s, and that's kind of where my whole love for the web started out. So in that time, I've been working in one of the 10 security domains at one given time or another, from physical security to information security and so on, and that's kind of where we're at today and how we kicked off security. So my presentation is really terrible, so not a lot to this. I'm going to go over some really brief stuff, some kind of background on where we're at today in terms of the internet, why the internet is awesome, why there's inherent risk out there. And I'm gonna cut out a lot of the noise that you hear about. We need these 42 plugins and oh my gosh for security because they're gonna hack me and I'm gonna serve Viagra ads. We're gonna concentrate on 5 things. You do these 5 things and you do them consistently, you're gonna reduce your risk of infection or infecting someone else that's visiting your website. So some brief stats. Over 2 billion internet users today. Now that's up a considerable amount over the last 10, 15 years, and we're seeing continued growth there. And along with that, we're seeing a lot of new websites coming up. Somewhere around 100,000 new websites or domains are purchased and go online weekly. This has been sustained and continuing to grow now with the advent of new top-level domains. This isn't going away. Everybody's getting in on the internet game. That webmaster of old, who was that geeky dude in the corner with a 6-pack of Mountain Dew, that's not the case anymore, right? Everybody's a website owner. Everybody's a website manager today. So with that comes some great creativity. At the same time, some inherent risk that's increased because of the level of involvement, education, and resources that it takes to maintain a website. 2 billion sites by 2015. Tony Snyder, the CEO of Automatic, put this out probably about a year and a half ago now. We're somewhere around 650 million active websites on the internet today, and it's estimated to be somewhere around 2 billion by the year 2015. So again, we're seeing that progression, that growth. And through that growth, what have we seen? We've seen changes in the way that we communicate, the way that we pass information, the way that we interact with each other, and folks that we may generally not have had interaction with, right? So a lot of innovative, cool stuff comes with the growth of the internet. But the challenge there, it's not always peachy. Things aren't always as great as they seem. For every awesome innovation that we see online today, there's someone trying to exploit that or do nefarious things to attack you and to somehow gain off of that, typically in a monetary sense. And we see that a lot with malicious software, with malware in general, where they're attacking your website or your software to do something that, and making it do something that it's not intended to do. And again, they do it in most instances for some type of monetary gain. Did you have something? No. Yeah. So if I'm going too fast, sorry, I drank like 18 cups of coffee today, so there's that. And as you see here, we've got a quick breakdown of that. Redirecting affiliate marketing schemes. So how many of you seen where you go to Google and you go to type in a website that you're looking, or some keywords, and all of a sudden you've got Viagra ads versus what you're actually typing for, right? And what they've done is, that's an SEO poisoning tactic. And what they do is, and they'll actually redirect you when you click that link thinking it's, Joe's Pizza or what's the barbecue place here next door, and all of a sudden it's sponsored by Cialis, right? And you click that link, well, we laugh, but it's true. And it's a $150 million a year industry, right? Just in the affiliate marketing schemes that they're putting out. And it's not necessarily the medical organizations that have these websites that are nefarious or doing illegal things, but they have an affiliate program that's very wide open and maybe not managed to the extent of illegal things happening for folks to redirect people there to gain money off of, right? So you've got Joe Schmo down the road who goes, sweet, I can go ahead and redirect and steal people's search engine optimization, and I'm going to redirect them to these legitimate pill sites, right? And I get click-through money for every person that I redirect over there. And, the pharmaceutical folks are excited because they're selling you Viagra for $1.15. You're not going to get that price anywhere. If you need a link, let me know. I might be able to hook you up after the show. And this is continuing to grow because there isn't a good sense of management around this or any standardization around how it should be done. They're making money. The folks doing illegal stuff are making money, so they're going to continue to do that. And that's what most of these attacks that you see online are based on, some type of monetary benefit. So when Susie's awesome cupcake website gets hacked, and she goes, well, why did I get hacked? It's just a cupcake website. And it's the greatest cupcake website. Well, it wasn't because Susie did something wrong or she was being targeted. It's an opportunistic attack. And somewhere in the ballpark of 93 to 95% of all the attacks that we see on the internet actively today are opportunistic attacks. It's attack a large footprint because the larger my attack scale is, the more profitability I will see. It's automated opportunistic attacks, right? We want to be able to scan for known vulnerabilities. We want to check as many of these websites across the internet at one time that we can and find the ones with those vulnerabilities and inject automatically these payloads that will start to push these redirects and steal your SEO and such, right? They don't care that you're selling cupcakes. They don't care who you are. The idea is that you didn't do what you needed to do to ensure that you were mitigating risk to the extent of they couldn't get into your site because you had your stuff updated or you weren't using password as a password, right? So that's what we're going to get into in some of the tips to remove some of that onus off of you. So how bad is it? Well, we see somewhere around 2 million new malware strings monthly. So that's brand new types of attacks or variations to existing malicious software that's been written, that's deployed across the internet actively, right? So we're talking 650 million active websites or so, 2 million new malware strings monthly. That's a pretty insane number, right? And it's continuing to grow. Now, the number that really boggles my mind is this costs the U.S. and folks, consumers across the U.S. around $2 billion a year. So that's in lost time, that's in reputation management, that's in paying organizations like mine to come and clean this stuff up. It's like redoing websites, updating and managing things after the fact. We're talking $2 billion a year just in lost time due to these malicious attacks on websites. So the threat's there, the threat is real. The number's actually grown a bit. Google issues about close to 5 million warnings daily now, and somewhere between 12 and 14,000 websites are blacklisted daily. Have you guys seen that red banner? You go to a website and all of a sudden it says, this may be a harmful website. This may be distributing malware. That's a blacklist warning. You'll see it push through Chrome, and you'll also see it connected to Firefox. Firefox Foundation is connected with Google and this Safe Web Browsing Foundation to to be able to push these Google blacklisting pages out. And that's just Google, right? We're able to calculate, probably tenfold number of blacklisted websites when you bring in McAfee, Site Advisor, and the myriad of other agencies out there that are actually legitimately blacklisting websites. So it's a big number. So great stuff going on, awesome growth, but with that, just like anywhere else, we've got people trying to do bad stuff at the same time. And here's how it happens, really. I would say, in the 90th percentile, when you look at the top two, outdated software and exploited, and we're going to change that a bit, exploited passwords, not just FTP, that's one of them. So WordPress passwords, your FTP, your hosting panel, all of the different credentials that you would need, that you have that will somehow get you into where your website files and all of your software and stuff are at. Over 90% of the attacks that we deal with, whether it's a new infection or someone getting reinfected, and sometimes multiple times, it's due to those first two things. We have customers that will come in, we'll clean them up, and they've just got some every single PHP file is infected on their website, and we clean them up and we give them an after-action report. Look, this is probably how they got in. You're using password as password for your FTP. This is cool. And not only that, but you're running 2.5 something of WordPress. Like, that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. You need to get this updated, and you need to change your credentials. 2 days later, they're submitting another ticket to us going, hey, we're reinfected again. Your password is password, and you still haven't updated. And this is just a constant cycle, right? We're telling you these things for a reason, because they're coming and reinfecting you right through that same thing. Remember, automated opportunistic attacks. Once they've attacked you, and once they know your domain, and they know your IP address, guess what happens? It goes on a cool little list, and then now they can go and recheck your site to see if you've changed those things, if you've fixed those problems, right? And they're still outdated, is that vulnerability still existing on their site? And when it is, they just re-inject. And when it is, you end up coming to see me again that we need to fix you, or you're freaking out because Google's blacklisted you, right? And you know, Susie that's selling her cupcakes, now she's got this red banner, so all of her sales start to decrease, right? Because no one's able to get through to that because of the blacklist warning. We're going to talk about that. I use it on every single one of my devices. It's wonderful. In fact, it's probably one of the most effective ways to manage your credentials locally, because although it gives you the feeling that it's managed remotely, it's not. You've got files locally that are encrypted that are actually storing all of your credentials. They're hashed and salted and all that fun stuff. And then from there, you're able to connect that to all your devices. You're able to, I know maybe 2 or 3 passwords, and I've got thousands of accounts because I don't need to memorize them anymore. And that's great. You can beat me silly, you're just not getting it out of me. Right? And we'll get that, because one of those top 5 areas in terms of risk reduction is password management, and we're going to have to talk about that, because that's again, it's one of the top 2 areas that we need to concentrate on. It's one of the top 2 areas that are being exploited today in attacking active websites. Hosting issues, we get some hosting providers at a small scale now, right? There's been attacks on hosts and stuff. You don't see it as much. It's not one of the biggest kind of attack vectors. Although it does happen, it's very small in comparisons to the other types of attacks. And exploit, 0 days. So Joe the hacker comes in and creates a new malware string, and it's in the wild today, and it's injecting and infecting all of these websites, and there is no active solution or fix patch for that vulnerability that's being exploited. That's what's considered a 0-day attack. It's so brand new that there's no remedy, no answer to fixing it. That's at the bottom, because usually a patch will come out within a couple days, and then that's deployed. And then now you're starting to look at outdated software, right? Because there's a patch now, that means that you're out of date. That means that you have not added that patch, so you fall into category number 1 versus 4 at that point. And those are the top 4 areas on how they're coming in at a high level. And are you at risk? So the person or the company or the organization, the plugin, the whatever that tells you that, hey, I am your silver bullet and you're not going to be hacked anymore and we can prevent it completely, you need to go ahead and never use them. Never talk to them again, because they're full of it. There is no silver bullet. The percentage of risk can never be 0, and that's just the reality of the world that we live in. Think about it. The dodo bird doesn't exist, right? But if there's DNA of that dodo bird, who's to say that at one point they won't recreate that whole thing and all of a sudden there's a dodo bird running around? Chances are probably small, and that's cool, but the percentage of risk of that happening is not zero. The reality is it could be reconstructed. Horrible analogy, but we'll run with it. So what can we do? Top 5 areas, and this is really what it comes down to, folks. Kill all the other noise. There's plugins and stuff, and certainly some areas that'll help you. We want to practice defense in depth, but don't rely on a piece of software to protect you from a piece of software attacking your software. Does that make sense? There's a lot of false sense of security with a lot of the tools that are being put out there in the sense of marketing. They want to sell to you and this type of fun stuff. These are the 5 areas that we're going to talk about today that if you concentrate on, you're going to put yourself in a better position in terms of risk management and increasing your security level to the point where you're going to have a better feeling about being attacked. Again, percentage of risk can never be zero. So we're going to keep software updated. We're going to talk about no soup kitchen servers, reducing risk, password management, and then my favorite is backups, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? So if you don't have a way to get through that and recover your files and your data and such, you're doing yourself a disservice. All right. This is the top of the list, right? We had software, outdated software, and credentials, so passwords. It leads to a majority of the stuff that we see in terms of reinfections and infections. And we get this a lot. It's like, hey, I don't want to update because the moment that I update my website, my theme explodes or that plugin stops working. So you need to do a couple of things as an administrator to make sure that you're reducing the risk of stuff breaking. One of the things that I recommend is don't do this stuff live, right? So if I have a production environment and I know that I'm going to have 1,000 visitors a day or what have you, and if it goes down, I'm hurting my bottom line. Well, why in the heck would I try new software live like a cowboy? Me and my Spurs, this is awesome. No way. That's a bad look. Set up a development environment. Really simple to do in most shared environments today. If you're running on a dedicated server and stuff like that, you already know how to do this. I'm talking, you know what you're doing there because you're managing your stuff. In shared environment, it's very simplistic to set up a subdomain, right? It's very easy for me to take a dump from the MySQL database, right? I'm going to have a panel for that and recreate that whole environment so it's mimicking my production environment. Now, I've got the same exact software, themes, plugins, database, all of my data, everything's the same in both. I'm going to do it in development because now when I test that and something explodes, awesome. I can dissect it, I can figure out what's going on. I'm going to reduce the amount of downtime that I have when that breaks. Now, let's step back a little bit because, again, you're setting yourself up for failure if you're using stuff that's not using standards, it's breaking on upgrade. What I would recommend is that you vet the author of the plugin and themes and stuff that you're using to ensure that they're using WordPress best practices and that it's actively being serviced. So a plugin that hasn't been updated in 2 years, there's probably a suitable alternative that actually has an upgrade path available to you along with when WordPress updates, right? So you need to do some research to make sure that it's being actively developed and they're coding to WordPress standards. They're removing, old calls and functions and things like that are no longer in use. But 9 times out of 10, that's really when stuff breaks. They're using old deprecated stuff that it just doesn't work with new versions of WordPress, right? So making sure that you're validating your software and that your authors are doing the right thing in terms of supporting that software before you go and use it. Once you're using it, test it offline or test it in a development environment before you go live. Does that make sense? 3.6. Who doesn't love 3.6? Everybody running 3.6? That's what's called a major release. Okay? You got a bunch of new functionality added. And all the major releases are going to be like that, 3.7, 3.8, and so on. Now, that third number, so if it's 3.6.1, 0.2, 0.3, it's called the point release. And those don't add new functionality. So the rule of thumb there is these are security enhancements or some type of bug fix. I can't say without a doubt because, again, risk is never zero, but 99% of the time I will say that those will not break or explode your website. It's crucial that you get those updated as quickly as possible. I recommend that you go and check on your production or in a development environment for all major releases, so 3.6, 0.7, and so on. so that you're checking it, because a lot of new features are being added, old functions are being removed, new functions are being added and such, and sometimes there's conflicts with themes and plugins and so on. So that's going to help you reduce risk there. Any questions about the updating? Now, let me add another point. This goes for plugins and themes also. So it's awesome that you've got WordPress running 3.6x, your latest version, but if your theme's from 3 years ago, chances are it may have some issues there. So making sure that you're keeping your plugins and themes updated is crucial. The last time that there was a major vulnerability in WordPress was pre 3.0. It was 2.91 through 2.94, I believe. Okay, we're talking a few years ago. The cool thing with WordPress core is that there is a very strong development culture behind it, and a security team that in the event that something is disclosed that's very detrimental, that's a known, or a discovered vulnerability inside a core, it gets patched very quickly, and then that gets deployed to however many millions of websites are running it now, right? We've got 18.9% of the internet is ran by WordPress today. Do you know that? That's crazy. So there's a significant amount of websites running it. It's imperative that they're keeping core up to date. It's not where we run into problems for the most part. It's in themes and plugins that are outdated. So make sure that you're keeping your themes and plugins updated. Make sure again that you're reviewing, the way that your authors are actually updating their stuff, and making sure that they're keeping up to date with the latest versions of WordPress. Okay. All right. No soup kitchen servers. Have you ever been in the kitchen cooking, and next thing you know, you're this elaborate, just gourmet, just ninja magic deliciousness, right? And next thing you know, you've got pots over here, pans, spoons, and you can't even move to find the blender or whatever else, right? You've got stuff all over the place. It's terrible. And it's the same thing, and the same premise of the whole discussion here, on your server. Your server is exactly that. You've got a website, it's a website server. We want to display that website to anybody that's going to come visit it, right? It's not a storage server. So if you've got, 10 gigs of archives on there, that's probably not awesome. It probably doesn't make sense to have the 40 themes and plugins that you were testing when you were developing the site, right, maintained on there, because what happens with those? As they sit there, it's still a piece of software, and over time, the risk of it becoming vulnerable increases. So no soup kitchen servers. Don't store it on your server. If it's not in use, get rid of it. That's a cool thing with most of the plugins and themes from a WordPress perspective, especially the free ones, is they're in a repository where you can go download them again when you want to. In fact, you can, right from your panel, you can load any of the free plugins from the WordPress repository. So adding and removing is pretty simple. Don't store it on your server. There you go. One of the big problems that we ran into in 2010 was a script named TimThumb. You guys familiar with TimThumb? TimThumb is a script that's used to manipulate photos. Now, it wasn't included in WordPress core, but it was used by a high percentage of the commercial themes and plugins out there in the WordPress world. What ended up happening is a vulnerability was discovered in it and disclosed, and there was no patches for it. And what ended up happening is attackers found this, and what it would allow them to do is, instead of uploading, what the script allowed to do was upload images, manipulate them, and then you can display them on your WordPress site, through your theme or your plugin, whatever's using the script. The challenge was that it wasn't sanitized, and it would allow actual PHP to be hidden, to look like an image. It would be uploaded, and then it could be arbitrarily executed. So then I can upload a PHP file to your server, and it could be a backdoor file that allows me contact with your server without needing any of your other credentials, and it would allow me to upload whatever I wanted and infect all of your websites. Everything that was on that shared space that was under the same user account. We saw hundreds of thousands of websites infected by this. And it wasn't even a WordPress specific problem. This is used by Drupal, and it was used by other stuff as well. The challenge there was that in most cases, even in the themes and the plugins for commercial themes and plugins where the authors updated their stuff, it didn't matter. What people were doing wasn't removing it from the server. They were leaving it disabled, thinking that, all right, if it's off, then I'm good to go. The challenge was it wasn't a WordPress problem. It was a server-level PHP execution issue. So just being on the server alone was allowing these folks to do remote scans, and it's still happening today. We're talking 3 years ago when this thing was exploited. Today, we still see the attacks. Because all they do is they automate an attack looking for TimThumb, and when it finds it, it sees if it's an old version, and boom, sends that PHP file up, and next thing you know, you're Viva Viagra. Here we are again. It's that vicious cycle. It just continues to go, and it comes down to some very simple tactics that you can take to reduce that risk. If it wasn't on the server, you wouldn't have had the problem. So if it's not an active thing that you have on your website for production today, get it off your server. Okay? Goes into user accounts too. We see a lot of problems in the shared server space because what a lot of server providers and web hosting providers allow you to do is I create an XYZ account for myawesome.com, but then I can create 50 more websites right under that, right? So I've got 50 WordPress installs and databases and all this fun stuff in there, and it's pretty cheap. That's kind of cool. But the problem is it's all created with one user account. So the premise that most attackers are going to take is own one, own all. And that's super kick-ass because you just gave me 50 websites for the price of one. I get in on one vulnerability or one old piece of software that you left on my website, cool.com, and all 50 of your websites are now sponsored by Cialis. So segmentation by user is something that we highly recommend. In some instances, it's not cost-effective or appropriate. I get it. But that's how you're going to mitigate risk. If I need to log in with a different user into FTP or into my server to find these websites or to administer these websites, I've segmented those sites. Proper role usage. We'll talk about that a bit as we move into it. It's imperative. But the challenge here is what we're trying to minimize is cross-contamination. If I infect one and I can infect all, you're in a bad spot. So segment as much as possible. Any questions there?
So on that, you're talking about like add-on domains with the shared hosting versus using WHM. Okay.
And the reality is it's over hundreds of servers out there. I get it. And it is cost effective, certainly. But that's the challenge you run into if you get infected. There was one site we were cleaning. It's been a little while now. I go in and I see this. It's an piece of eval PHP code. It's all encoded. I'm like, all right. So I find it. I decode it, and I go, well, this is linking back to another website. All right. Going to find out it's on the server list. So I go in there. I'm like, all right. I go and find where the reference at. It's another piece of eval code. I decode that, and that's linked to another website that happens to be in a server list. So now we're 3 websites in deep. The malware wasn't even on the main one, but that's what's blacklisted because that's what's outputting it on page request. So when you go to visit it, it's showing like a pop-up or whatever it was, right? But it wasn't even on that site. The actual malicious code was 3 websites away, and it was just daisy chaining over. Because one got hit, and this elaborate scheme, they infected across everything. It was terrible. So reality is, in most cases, people are willing to take that risk or accept that risk because of monetary reasons. But in actuality, where they're going to end up spending is on the long term when it gets infected, they're going to get everything nailed. So it is a little bit more upfront cost to segment in a lot of cases. You know, dedicated servers and stuff like that are great, but now you've got management costs, administration costs, and such. But that's knowing that that's how you can reduce the risk of everything getting trashed is to segment.
Yeah, you can control what you use, you can't control what the other does.
So that's a great point because there's 2 different types of shared. When I say shared, you have shared where I go to GoDaddy or I go to whoever, and I've got a shared server where all of us can have our own segmented spot. Okay? In most cases, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened or doesn't happen today in some areas, in most cases, you're pretty safe there. At the server level, they've done a pretty good job of segmenting that because, well, they'd be hearing from me tenfold if for some reason you're viewing my stuff on my server or my server space. The other piece of shared is within my space, I now create 50 different websites, right? It allows me to do that. The challenge there, it's all done with the same user account. So I get in with that user, or I am able to penetrate through a vulnerability under that user account. I can escalate across all of it, right? So, yeah.
One thing with the Tim Thumb too is that you have to be careful there because it's still being deployed with all kinds of plugins within the repository. Sure. So if you're installing any kind of plugin,
so there's a couple plugins out there that allow you to scan to see if you've got any out there. And I know we check in all of our remediation process. That's one of the things we check is they're still getting nailed today. People running really old versions of it. It's been fixed for a couple of years, so it's decreased, but it's still existing. You're absolutely right. If it's out there and you don't know it, you're running an outdated version. You're at high risk.
Are you going to go over those plugins as well, like for the presentation that you just mentioned?
Man, this guy. Yeah, probably. reduce access. This one hurts my soul. I could probably show a video of this. I'm able to, with an off-the-shelf software, I'm able to enumerate, and what I mean by enumerate, check for every single username in your WordPress installation without having to go from the front end. I just do this all via command line. I can find every single user, associated to every user ID that you have, and then make some very educated guesses as to which one may be an admin or a super admin in the event of a multi-site instance. What that allows me to do is attack those specifically. So when you install WordPress, what's typically the first ID that's installed there? It's usually an admin. All right. So I would say even if that first one doesn't work, I'd probably check the first 5, and it's good chances that one of those is going to be an admin user. And then just using dictionary style attack with passwords from a dictionary, and you can get these lists anywhere, 6, 10, 20 million passwords, and I can just start bombarding your site. Now that I have the username, I can enumerate those passwords until I get a match, and then I'm inside of your WordPress instance. So, yes, this helps, but no, it doesn't. What I mean by this is a lot of people tell you to change your admin user from admin. Yes, it does help in an automated type of brute force attack. Where it doesn't help you is in some type of numerated dictionary attack like that. If you don't have other controls in place, like a failed login manager. So there are some plugins for that, like to limit login attempts. That's something that I would recommend. But the idea or the whole concept there is to limit the folks that are able to access that. So one of the things that we recommend for your WP admin, and there's plenty of plugins. We've got a free one in the repository. There's a few other ones. Is limit the ability to people to get to your WP admin altogether, and limit it by IP address. So there is some dynamics to that, right? Because if you've got a changing IP address, how are you going to be able to get in there if your IP address changes? So there's third-party applications and stuff for that. The idea is to limit people from going there. The other portion of that, instead of looking at it from a perspective of just changing your admin user to whatever else, is using the appropriate account for what you're trying to accomplish. So if you're not coming in to add or remove plugins or change themes, add a widget and such, why should you be using an admin user account, right? So if you've got 20 people that have an account in your WordPress, how many of them are admins? How many of them are legitimately admins, and how many of them are just contributors or authoring stuff, right? So the idea is to use the appropriate role, because they're not. 99% of the time, it's just people don't do it. And it may be that the scheme is flawed and such. Maybe it's just not ingrained in people the right way, but using the correct role for the correct thing. And that in itself will reduce the amount of administrators that you need or accounts that you need, therefore reducing your risk. Because for every admin user you add, that's another escalated role, right? They can be penetrated, can be become vulnerable if they're using poor passwords and such. Gives me an extra entrance. So we want to practice least privilege, right? Give people enough access to do their job, nothing more, nothing less. And once they're done with their job, get rid of it. That goes for FTP, SSH, anything on that server. So if they're able to access any of the files or any of the control functions, give them the role that they need to get their job done. Don't give everybody SSH access. Don't give everybody FTP access. You might need to go upload something for me. Awesome. So I gave you access. I gave you SFTP or SSH because I don't believe in FTP really. And then you go, awesome, Dre, I got it up, and all the files are up. And I go, sweet. Thanks, B, but your privileges are now gone. You no longer have access because you don't need it. You're done. Okay? So how many use FTP? And I still do sometimes because some of our customers don't have SFTP or SSH. They only have FTP. So what FTP is a file transfer protocol. And what it is it's a connection mechanism, a protocol that allows you to connect to the server directly and see the file structure to be able to add and remove, edit files. Okay? It's very helpful, very useful. The challenge with that specific protocol is that it's not secure. It has no level of encryption on it. In the sense that if I were to connect in an open transmission, so if I'm like on an open network and I go to connect FTP, all those packets are going over the air, they're going over the network, they can be captured, they're not encrypted, and my credentials are passed in the clear, non-encrypted. So an attacker can take those and now they have access to your website via FTP. So it's always recommended that you use SSH or SFTP. When we talk about removing access or reducing access, again, it goes for all these things. The databases, all of your server level connection protocols, FTP, SFTP, SSH, WordPress, and your control panels. So don't be handing out your account info for your host, right? And now we're gonna get into passwords. So we'll get into the unique piece there. Two-form authentication wherever you can. And there are some plugins out there. I think I'll have it here at the end of this one as well. Google Authenticator is one of them. Is really solid. Allows you to use 2 different forms of authentication to get online or to log into the account. Okay. Any questions? All right. I was supposed to hack a website on here. I could probably show it.
What? Absolutely.
Well, I'm not going to hack it, but I will.
Can you show us how to hack a website?
No. What I'm going to show you is.
I mean, this technically is a hacker's thing, so.
Let's see. All right, this is a simple. Why is it not coming out? Let's see. There we go. All right. You're not gonna be able to see it. You dim the lights there. All right, so what we have here, and please don't go hack my site. Drearmeda.com. It's just a personal blog of mine, and the reason I use a personal site is because it's actually illegal for me to go hack someone else without having permission. So what I have here is an off-the-shelf, open-source software named WP Scan. This is straight up script kiddie. This is not very sophisticated in terms of the process that I'm using here. The idea is to show you how trivial it is. So what I'm doing now is I'm scanning Drearmeda.com through the terminal to try to enumerate the users that are associated with that WordPress instance. So it runs through, and right now it's checking to see all of the usernames that are on the site. I actually did this one live at Blog World this year. So right now you see that there's 2 usernames there. I see that the first one's Dre, the second one's Dre Armeda. So there's 2 user IDs there. Again, very generic site. All right, I'm going to check the Dre one to see if it's an admin account. I'm going to try to enumerate the passwords now. I've got a password list with hundreds of thousands of passwords that are known passwords. So think about this. LinkedIn and a bunch of other sites in the last year have been owned, and password leaks all over the place. What do you think attackers do? They take those and they try to run them on other sites. Because the chances are if you've got a LinkedIn account, that you have a Facebook account as well. So they're going to try to check to see if they can own your account there as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run that user or that password list against the username Dre, which I know I've already established exists. And I'm going to see if I can get them to match.
So is that off the post author or scanning the content of the site?
It'll pull the actual WordPress user IDs. And it'll associate the username, it's all public. So right now what it's doing is it's pinging my WP admin basically, looking for a match. And it found one. So that password was in the password list. It associated with my username. So now I'm going to see if this is an admin account. I'm going to log in to see what type of level access I have.
What's the time frame on that?
It took me about 5 minutes to do this whole thing. Yeah. Well, you're seeing.
I'm not guessing the passwords. They haven't been sped up or anything.
No, this is real time.
It's script within a couple seconds. Here.
Real time.
Well, that's why I did it last time.
Well, thanks for ruining my demo. It's funny when I was doing them, oh crap, there's LastPass. So I got in with that username and password. I can see that I have plugins and all the different options on the left-hand side, so I know I have escalated privileges. So now the exciting thing is I want to show off my cool design skills. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to deface this site with my cool new design skills. So, and we do see this attack actively today. I'm going to go find the index file for the main theme, which is active now. I'm going to get my nifty pre-made HTML code. My template, yeah. No, I'm not in the Syrian Electronic Army. We're good. So now I've replaced the good code from my index file with this hacked defacement code. And I'm going to go ahead and update that. And now when I refresh on the main website, I should have a defaced site. And there you have it. So a super cool hacked website. Now, again, trivial approach here, folks. This is not something that you're going to see in terms of automated attacks and things like that. They will automate the entrance there. When you have defacements like this, one thing that helps you avoid that, well, one, passwords, and we'll get into that now. But the other piece is having your editor disabled. So if I'm not using my editor, I don't know really who does really this day and age. I would disable it. Let's close that. Sorry. All right. So with a simple snippet in your WP config file, you can disable the editors, so that when you go in there, they can't even be used. So even if my password was owned at that point, they went in there to try to use the editor to change my theme file, they couldn't have, right? And you can actually, that snippet's right in the codex, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it in front of me.
Unless you use the same password for your FTP.
And then you're just screwed. So yeah, he's totally right though. So that's where we're going to get into password management. If you could take one thing away from this, it's password uniqueness. Okay, they attacked LinkedIn. In fact, my username and hashed password was in that list, but they couldn't crack it because I had such a just elaborate password that it never got cracked. Well, that we know of, right? It would have taken literally, because it's not in a password list anywhere. And that's when I talk about uniqueness. Password, dog, your mother's maiden name, it could make one of these lists. So let's try to use something that's very unique. How about some lyrics from a song? But make it like a whole sentence. Make it as as long as you can. When you think about the length of a password at 15 characters, unique that aren't in a dictionary style attack, it could take a supercomputer about 3 months to crack. The idea is using something unique, though. If I'm using it on LinkedIn, I shouldn't be using it on Facebook, my bank account, PayPal, and everything else. Because own one, own all. So be unique across all of your passwords. That's where LastPass and software like that comes into play. I create a unique one with that anytime I register for a new account. Or when I go changing my passwords, I set the criteria for the length and such, throw spaces in there. That's best thing since sliced bread. Now, I get frustrated when I add a space inside of a password and the actual software doesn't let me. It's like it's so behind the times, it won't let me use a or space and password. But that screws up the whole mechanism for breaking down the password. But use something like LastPass. There's various other ones out there. It'll allow you to create unique passwords at certain lengths and so on that you don't even see. They're completely masked from you. You can view them, you can share them, but they won't even know what the actual password is. So once it's used and it's gone. So definitely check that out. But really, it comes down to unique use across all of your different logins, and using unique. The one I've used in the past, or the example I've used is a Gettysburg Address, 7 years ago, right? It's pretty long, it's pretty unique, and if I start throwing characters and spaces and stuff in there, I'll probably remember it, or there's a higher chance I'll remember it, and probably not a great chance that you're going to guess that, right? So think of it in terms of passphrases versus passwords. Something a little bit longer and unique. Again, unique across all of your platforms.
You have LastPass, and then you have an app like Hootsuite, where you're collecting services within there, and you're using LastPass. That works okay?
I use Hootsuite, and it works great. I haven't had much issue there. Now, I can't speak to their level of security and storing any of those credentials because you do need to authenticate there. And then it'll bring up the prompt to be able to, like for Facebook or Twitter, saying, hey, do you want to authorize Hootsuite? But in terms of how they grab the credentials and stuff from there, I can't speak to that, but it certainly works fine. I haven't had many issues, and I use both of those. Any questions there? Password's unique. You got to stick to unique. All right, man. So every single one of my PHP files is infected. Got Viagra ads. Yeah, little baby kittens are dying across the earth because my website's been hacked. And all right, well, we could probably fix it for you, but your theme's exploded. They've encoded your good code with the bad code, and there's just nothing left. Can you send me a backup? Well, what do you mean? I don't have a backup. You don't have a backup of your theme, okay? Do you have a backup of your database? Because your database has a bunch of crud in it, and we can't fix it. It's just non-recoverable. Well, I don't have a backup of that. Sounds like you're rebuilding a website, is what it sounds like. It's going to happen. You're going to run into issues at some point. Not even if it may not be a security problem. Maybe that your site goes down or what have you. You need to have a way to recover as much of that as you can in a timely fashion. Because if not, you're down. You're dead in the water. So if you're selling cupcakes or you're selling whatever and your business depends on it, it is probably a good idea if you don't have a backup regimen instituted now, that you certainly look into doing it as soon as possible. Schedules are going to differ. I don't know how often you're updating your content. It might be once a month, it might be once a week, right? So you're going to determine what's best for you in terms of full backups and then incrementals as you add new data or remove new data and such. But it's imperative that you have some type of backup sequence in place. And more importantly, again, we get back to Soup Kitchen server. Don't store it on your server, okay? It doesn't belong there. That's your production environment. Me, as an attacker, if I'm going to come and attack your site, if I come to target you, the first two things I'm going to kill are all of your server logs, everything you got in there, any server log I can find, error logs, what have you, they're gone. I'll have a copy, but you won't find them on your server. And the second thing I'm doing, I'm getting rid of all your backups. Because now, one, you don't know where I was, what I did, and you have no way to recover your stuff. It's a cold game. But that's the reality. So store it off-site. Store it in the cloud somewhere. Store something locally as well as you can. If you can have two copies in separate locations away from your production environment, you're winning. Right? You have a way to recover. You have means to find those files and get them up there as soon as possible so that you reduce the amount of downtime, which therefore reduces the amount of loss to you. Okay?
We have one emailed to us, and we have one through a third party.
What was the first one?
Email. So
pushes that to email.
Or you can have it pushed to like Dropbox or S3.
Which is super, super solid. Is that email server separate from your web server?
It's Gmail.
Okay, see, there you go. Yeah. That's a good way to do it. So now that's actually two remote services.
Yeah.
But they're all segmented, which is exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good deal.
You can set it up too so that it's like a daily backup on a rotating basis. So every week it starts rotating those backups also. So
there's a couple backup solutions here. I'm going to add a third one because we just launched one, so I've got to plug my service here. But Backup Buddy, a great plugin. These are both commercial plugins, Wordpress and Backup Buddy. They do have a cost associated with them, both a little bit different in terms of how they work. Both really, really good solutions. So check them out if you don't have something in place. There are some free alternatives in the repository. I typically like to speak to free alternatives. I haven't used any of them to date where I've reviewed them and can give them a high five thumbs up. So these are the two that I've used. Sucuri has also launched a backup solution, which is $5 a month, unlimited per website. And it stores it all in our environment. It'll separate your database and all of your files. So you have 2 downloads available, and it'll do a full backup daily. Okay. Password management, we talked about LastPass. I use it, I love it, I live by it. I have it on my phone, I have it on all of my devices, so I can quickly get any credentials that I need to, and roll from there. When I was part of Southern California Gas Company in their information security department, one of the solutions that we deployed was KeyPass Password Safe. Awesome alternative, also free, and you can find that online. Again, download it and use it. Another paid solution, 1Password. I've used it. I'm not currently using it. Kick ass as well. Very nice. In terms of malware scanning, so if you're wanting to do a quick check of your site remotely for free, we've got a scanner named SiteCheck. It's at sitecheck.sucuri.net. Or you can go to Unmasked Parasites. They've got a really great intuitive scanner as well that'll check, see if you've got any funny business going on currently, if you've got any blacklist problems, security anomalies and such. Cleanup, we do full cleanup. So again, with our monitoring solutions, we do full remediation of any defacements, iframe redirects, all that fun stuff. Blacklisted, we'll submit for you and so on. Two-form authentication, Google Authenticator, there's a plugin in the repository. It's awesome. Go check it out. It's free. And Google Authenticator works across all of your devices as well. So if you want to check out two-form authentication for your websites, legit. And then limit fail logins. So limit login attempts is a good one. I think that, gosh, what's the other? I forget that plugin's name. There's another one out there that does it as well. That's the challenge with that. We have it in we do it algorithmically based on our web application firewall stuff. So we're able to through Sucuri's plugin, we check we have an algorithm that checks for what looks to be odd activity, and if it looks messed up, too many failed login attempts, stuff like that, we'll blacklist the IP address in your actual plugin dashboard, and that it won't be able to get back in until that's delisted and then whitelisted. But limit login attempts, and then our plugin also has that. We've got 2 plugins actually. One is in the repository, which is free, and then we've got a premium one that ties in some of our service stuff. So those are when you talk plugins, again, it's great to have defense in depth. It's okay to have a couple plugins that may do the same thing, do it a little differently because you're adding layers. Excuse me, what I caution you is on the false sense of security. Just because they say, awesome, we're going to secure you, you're hack proof, does not mean that you're hack proof. So stay away from that kind of snake oil stuff. Really stick to those 5 principles, right? We want to keep our stuff updated. No soup kitchen servers, limit access. We want to make sure that we're properly managing our passwords and that we have some type of disaster recovery plan with a backup solution in place. You do those 5 things and you're already ahead of the game. That's really it for me, and I am open to questions.